I am Gary, and we're at a house today that's got a pretty new roof on it. It's actually a shame that we're out here, but we do this a lot. We get calls after somebody roofs a roof. This was only roofed a couple of years ago, and it's been leaking around the skylights. It's been leaking around the chimney, and sadly the roofer just lives 3 or 4 houses down from the owner, and he hired him because he's a neighborhood roofer. But there's a whole lot more to roofing than just putting on shingles. If all you do is install shingles, you may indeed have problems around the skylight, around the chimney, in this case, both. Now we're going to be taking care of the chimney today, and I'm going to go up on top, show you kind of exactly what's going to take place. The entire crown, chimney crown, or the cap, the top of the chimney, was completely cracked, broken, water going inside. The flashing around the outside was letting water in, and then it got caulked, which creates even more damage. And that is one of the last things you want to do. In fact, I just got off of the phone with another call, and it was a skylight where they went up and did caulking around it, and she said it's actually leaking worse now than it was before they did the caulking. And my answer was, that's because you shouldn't be trying to seal your roof with caulk. Let's go up and take a look and see what's going on today. We'll probably come back tomorrow and do a little more of the shooting so you can see a little more of the process. Actually going to be one of our top technicians that's been doing these chimneys. In fact, as we were referred by a gentleman down the street, he had had a lot of problems with the chimney. We did a lot of things with him, but we did it while we were roofing, which is a big cost savings. But he referred us to this gentleman, and he wanted to make sure he had the same technician. Now, the house that we did down the road was 5 or 6 years ago, so that kind of gives you an idea. Our guys are still here, same guys out on this chimney doing the work. So we're going to go up on top and take a look. All right, so you got the top off. So yeah, that's no more than 5 feet on that, is there? Yeah, that's good. All right, so this is the biggest chunk in one piece, huh? Mm-hmm. And you got some of the brick tied in around the outside edge?
Yes.
Okay.
So this brick is inside.
It was on the inside. Okay. Yeah, I see their metal was down lower. How thin was it? Was this how thick it was on top of the outside brick?
3/4.
Oh yeah, well, that's way too thin. That's always going to crack. Oh yeah. Why did they set the brick down inside there? They should have had the cap on top. Okay, so
drywall first.
they had drywall.
That one, top that one. This and
Okay, so there's a lot of ways to not do it, and that would be one also. Now that chimney flue is really leaning sideways, Luis. What's the problem with that flue there?
I think the chimney is the fireplace and place the other side of which.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a wild job. And then they got some bracing. Well, that's good. At least they got the bracing on there. Okay, it's going to make it hard to put a flue on through. And of course, this is one that they did not have the flue all the way through. I'll show you pictures of that. But they just brought the flue up this high. Then water was pouring into the flue because it was just like a little opening on the top. All right, so this is, oh wow, this is a little bit different than I was expecting. All right, well, let's see what we can do. Okay, so before the guys start using all the materials, I wanted to go over some of the materials that we use. Most of the materials that we use before the guys start putting them in place on the chimney repair. Now again, this should all be done when you do a re-roof. If people are not offering this service, they're probably cutting you short. If you have a home that's 20, 25 years old, you have a chimney, a masonry chimney or a wood chimney, putting new flashing on, installing the new flashing, dealing with the mortar, all of this is a part of the project. Here comes the crew. Now, let me kind of get into this real quick. And you see behind me quite a bit of materials here. Now, we actually have two types of cement. One is masonry cement, and one is concrete. The biggest difference in masonry and concrete, they both have cement in them. Masonry, the mortar mix, has sand and cement. The concrete has aggregate. Now that aggregate is what is a part of what gives it the strength. Now this is 5,500 psi, pounds per square inch, and that is quite good. It's hard to get it with larger gravel. A little bit larger, I think, is actually better. And we actually put an additional small quantity of Portland in because we found the mix is a little lighter than the 5,500 that they say per square inch. Now, obviously, you're going to have a bucket here. You see the masonry cement again, and then you see the flue liner. The flue liner, or the flue of the chimney, was not large enough to go all the way up through the top. So water was just running in. I mean, it makes no sense at all. But we see this all the time. You know, once it gets way up on the top of the house, nobody knows what's going on up there. And, you know, for years they didn't do inspections. Now that's starting to change a little bit as the inspectors are becoming more knowledgeable. Now you also see here some insulation. This is installed before pouring the concrete cap or crown for the chimney around the flue, so the concrete does not surround the flue tightly, because if it does, it's going to crack the concrete when that heats up, and it will crack. It's a matter of time. So what we do is we put a couple of beads of that insulation around, gives it a space, and then we fill it with the 3M heat resistant sealant. It is a caulk type product that seals that small area, and there's very little water coming there. And this is the only maintenance area that you have, and you probably need to look at that at about 12 years. This product is very good, but we've not known about it for more than 12 years, so we recommend that you take a look at it and make sure that it stays sealed. Then you see over here a stack of actually step flashing. Now, Luis is here. He's unloading a lot of stuff behind me, and as you can see, there's more to it than meets the eye when you do a chimney repair. Here he's got some more quickcrete sand in case he needs it, some Portland cement, which I mentioned we're going to be mixing in with that. And then he has made up in the shop this morning the actual piecing of counter flashing and head wall flashing that goes into the chimney itself. He's got a spot welder, he's got his soldering gun, he's got a mixing pan for the concrete, he's got the shingles that match the shingles on the house. He's also got a little bit of acid. That acid is used for two things. It can clean the brick, but what he's using it for is he waters it down and he uses that as a corrosive for the metal, so it will actually bond in the soldering process, and then he washes that off because you can't leave it on the metal or it will corrode the metal long term. He's got his trowels, he's got the things that he needs to do the concrete, he's got his things that he needs to do that. And then I see in his truck a spray bottle. Now, a spray bottle is for installing that sealer on it. You always want to seal the concrete crown, the cap. You want to seal the masonry around the chimney down to the flashing, and that really helps prevent water from soaking in too far. Now you got to make sure you've got the right stuff. This that we're using is about $40 a gallon, and you know, if you buy this cheap stuff that you get at the big box stores, a lot of times that's sealing the brick too tight, and it does, like caulk, it will actually cause the brick or masonry to deteriorate. You don't want to do that. So he's going to be getting started on this, and I'm going to come back a little bit later. We're going to take a look at the actual work going on. Oh, you see behind me also the other parts back here. He's got the 6x6 wire mesh. That's what strengthens the concrete also. He's got the, basically we use a lath product to pour the concrete onto. That way you don't have something like drywall or something down the years falling down into the chimney. This one was before they actually put some rebars across, and then they put drywall, and then they put some brick to kind of, I don't know why they put the brick in there, but they put that in there, and then they poured the concrete up to that, and they only had a cap going over the external brick, the actual chimney sides, less than a half an inch thick, and of course it's probably cracked the first year, and that creates a leak. You see some additional rebars, and that again holds the lath in place. Additional rebars that go in the concrete. And you see the little wood box he has. He's got a box that goes all the way around. It's got a bevel on the top edge. That bevel creates a drip away from the chimney brick. Real critical, because if you can keep the water from running down the brick, the mortar in between the brick lasts much longer. And of course a few ladders and things so you can access it. More to it sometimes than people realize when you start looking at repairing a chimney. And we do this pretty much from scratch on making the actual flashings. You can see he's got an extra roll, and that's a 10-foot piece of 24 gauge galvanized. And that's what we use on most of it. You can paint that, you can leave it galvanized. It'll just turn nice patina gray. And it's just the best way to do it. Now we're going to be back and look at some of the work in motion and the finished work later today. All right, so Luis, let's go up on top and show me what you're doing. All right, so you got the concrete poured. Oh yeah, that's a nice crown. Okay, so you can look closely here. You can see the insulation that we were talking about earlier. It's in between here. So when the concrete dries here on the crown, this can be pulled out. And then that will be sealed with the 3M high temperature. Now here, you got that looking pretty straight. Which one did you cut? This one or the one below? So the old one you cut off level and then set this down on there. Okay, so here's the combination of the wood. So this wood is the one that was on the ground that had the beveled edges on it. And then this one, of course, is to create the curb to pour the concrete up against for this. So indeed the cap will hang over, the actual crown of the chimney will hang over this 3/4 of an inch when the wood goes away. Now here you see he's started to fill this in, and he'll be tuck pointing that, pushing that in a little bit more. This way, this counter flashing will catch the water. It has a kickback in it, on it, that is inside the brick. There's a groove cut, it's inside the brick. And you can see, it looks like you've got all the step flashing in already. So you see step flashing. So with every shingle there is a step flashing, step flashing. That means the water, instead of like a turn back flashing, that's nothing more than a gutter running under your shingles, that's inevitably going to leak once somebody steps on it or it gets full of leaves. And of course there's trees everywhere. If you look right here, we're 5 feet away from the trees. And so with a step flashing, everything flows back to the top of the shingles. That's the critical part to it. Now, yeah, this is looking good. This is all new flashing here, and this is very typical of how we do it. You can see the actual turn back, and you can see how far it is into the brick. So that's going to catch any moisture that hits on the face of the brick, soaks into the brick a little bit, and then it tracks it back out. And then this one is done the same way, and this is the flashing that covers up this head wall flashing that is fastened down with these screws. You never want to use nails in metal. They will wiggle loose. There's no way around that. Well, Luis, you're almost finished.
Yep.
Looks very good. I like the crown on it. I like the chimney flue pipe in straight. Wow, what a difference that's going to make.
Well, this is
Now what he's doing here is taking out the mortar so we can tuck point that better. We had 2 stones that moved during the pouring of the top. So because they move, that leaves a crack, and we want to get rid of that crack. We don't want any water. Masonry, brick, stone, the mortar that goes with it is made to let a little bit soak in, but it stops soaking in. Typically doesn't go in very far. It depends on how porous. Now, after we had a drought here, many things leaked that had never leaked before because the mortar, the rock, the stone, the brick became so porous during that 5-year drought. But typically the water is not going to go in very deep, but you want to make sure you have no cracks whatsoever. So that's why after we put the cap on, we ended up having a crack on this side and a crack on that side, probably from pulling the wood too tight or something, and things like that happen. But today we're back out to do two things. One is go ahead and clean it up afterwards, but he's going to tuck point those two areas, and we're going to clean up the chimney. Now I just put the caulk on that you've heard me talk about a number of times, and let me show you that. That's actually a project within itself. Now, I'm trying to get out of the sunshine shining through the trees here, but you can actually see the caulk around the edge. Now, this is the second time I've caulked that. This is a self-leveling caulk, and that's really a good thing because it will go down into the cracks. It will go down where you want it to go, but you probably will have to make two times by the project to get that caulk to top off. It had sunk in a little bit along the side, a little bit on the corner, a little bit on the other side and corner, and we don't want any voids there. We want that to maintain higher, running the water off onto the concrete cap. Now, the reason that we do this again is we don't want these caps to crack, and that is so very common. And so let's go over the type of caulk that we use. You've heard me talk about it many times. You've got to have something that's going to be tolerant to the enormous heat that can happen. Go ahead, Luis, you need to do that. Go for it. We'll hold on. The old flashing better, so the mortar will have more to hang on to, and also it's going to look better because the way it was, the mortar was out too far trying to cover up the flashing. We want to get that back into the brick so the mortar joints look very consistent going across. Now let's go back to the chimney and the caulking that we use around here. You want to get an appropriate one, and this looks really good. You see it starting to level out. It is a self-leveling product. The only problem with that is you almost always have to make 2 trips. Now this particular one dries real quickly, so within a couple of hours you can do the second coat on there. So you want to plan to get the caulk in and then get your cleanup done. By the time you get the cleanup done, you probably go ahead and caulk that. Now once again, the key is to get the right kind of product. And this is a product made by 3M. We have a lot of 3M products come out of the Austin area. I don't know if this is one of them, but I do know that after asking our supplier time and time again, they finally started carrying this product. Now this is heat resistant. It's actually a heat blocker, a fire blocker for many cases, so fire cannot penetrate through. So it's better than most any out there. And also they have multiple kinds that look just like this. They are in different colored tubes. You got to make sure you've got the one for concrete and masonry that is adequate for that. There are others that are just for metal, not for masonry, and they will not stick. I mentioned that earlier yesterday. Some chemicals cause cancer, some don't. So trust me, there's a lot of difference in the chemicals that go into these things. Some stick to concrete and some do not. You've got to make sure you got the right one, and you always want to get a heat tolerant. A fire blocker is the best. This one's by 3M. For me, being out on the job is my favorite part of it. Unfortunately, just not enough time anymore to be at all the jobs all the time. But it's great to be out here and coaching and working with the guys. Wonderful to have somebody like Luis that's been with us for years and years, that is willing to learn, willing to do it in a way that we know it's going to last and last. And that's what this is all about today. We're just fine-tuning our procedure. We've got a number of chimneys coming up. We wanted to start with this one. It's easy access, so I could get up here, do a little coaching. Others are not so easy. We've got a steep one 3 stories high coming up in a week. So they're going to be getting a little more complex and a little more difficult. And so we want to make sure we're perfect, fine-tuned. Every detail that we want is going to be done on these chimneys. There's not much on that side. Now just go ahead and do the whole thing so it all comes out even. All right, we are back at the roof. The guys are just finishing up. In fact, as they just rinsed off the roof, got all the dust from the masonry work off the shingles. Now that's an important step, because if you don't get the dust off from masonry, it will turn into concrete and it will stick to those shingles, leaving them nasty looking, just kind of washed out for a long time. It's an important step. You want to blow it off first, get everything off you can, then wash it off, even scrub it in areas where it's stuck to it. Now we're going to go up on top and take a look at the chimney. It's all complete. They have done the tuck pointing. A couple of brick got loose, so we did additional tuck pointing this morning. Tighten up those 2 corner brick from adding the chimney cap, and you'll see that up on top in just a little bit. I'll actually point that out. And the flashing is done. The shingles that needed to be replaced are now replaced. A little bit of correcting some shingles around the ridge vent, which was kind of a mess, but we've taken care of all of that. We've got the flashing on. The brick are now tuck point and clean. The flashing is painted. The cap is solid concrete, and it now has a spark arrestor that properly fits the flue liner. And that was already here. Not my top choice. It's a little bit flimsy on the connection point. Where we've just repaired the chimney, made it watertight. This is a repair that's going to last them for a lifetime, literally a lifetime. New concrete cap, new flashing, flashing made in a way that the roof can be re-roofed and put in new flashing, step flashing and head wall flashing without disrupting the counter flashing. It's the way they should be done from the beginning. We're going to go up on top and take a look, but first I'm going to actually do the final touches, and those final touches are to spray the chimney with a brick sealer. Now the one that we use, the one that we like to use, I've got it here in my truck, is this Kenpro Masonry Coatings. Now you can get a lot of things from the big box stores that say that they're going to be good for sealing brick and masonry and things, but believe me, most of them are not. Most of them sealed up like paint. They sealed up solid, and so your brick doesn't breathe. If the masonry doesn't breathe, you're going to end up with a problem of degrading the masonry between the brick and sometimes the brick itself by not letting it breathe. Instead, it's going to sweat, and that moisture staining there causes it to disintegrate the masonry. It's amazing how that works, and there's several videos out about that. You take a look at that. Let's go up on top and take a look at the actual spraying and then the final chimney. Okay, here we are. Here we are back up on the roof, all tangled up in my microphone cord here. Now we're at the roof, and you will hear on the you saw in the video earlier. You saw in the video earlier that I had mentioned I was going to tell the owner about this chimney spark arrestor, that it just wasn't installed well, that we put it in. I thought maybe it was going to last. It was windy when we put it on. Well, as it turns out, it got windier during the day, and the thing did blow off before I ever got a chance to tell him that it probably should do an upgrade on that. So now we're looking at going ahead and getting one that is going to stay on and hold this in place like it should. But what I'm going to be doing right now is spraying the chimney and the cap with a masonry sealer, and I found out that it's real easy to do if you get one of these little bottles that you can hold with one hand. I used to do this with one of those big pump ups that held a lot, and you just don't need that. These are very small. And you want to start and see how the spray is going to hit, because chances are it's going to hit you right in the face. And this won't hurt the shingles, it won't hurt the paint. It will look wet on the brick for a little while, and then it will dry completely clear. Now this does not seal the brick from breathing the air. It will not deteriorate the brick, and that's a very important aspect. You want to make sure you're getting the right thing when you do this. Now I'm going to move back a little bit here. Very easy. So you just spray it, and that's really all you have to do. It's going to be a little bit of residue build up for a few days on the shingles and for a few days on the flashing, and then that's going to go away. It will totally turn clear. It's a wonderful product, but you want to make sure you buy that at a commercial supply, because you cannot get that at your big box stores. What they're going to sell you at the big box stores is the generic brand that really doesn't let the brick breathe like it should, and that alone creates a problem. So you really don't want to do that. So you just want to get it on there really good. It's going to look a little wet at first, and then it's going to dry to its natural masonry state. That's what it's made for. It's a wonderful product. We've been using this, and they've got several different commercial products, but we've been using them for a long time. Had wonderful success. We've gone behind others that have used improperly, some that say they're also okay for masonry. They're really for sealing different woods and different things, and you know, they're too universal. They just really don't work that well. So you want to get something that really is going to work, and that's what we're doing here today. Oh yeah, you get it in your face too. Doesn't taste very good, but it won't hurt you. Don't get too much on you. We want to go ahead and seal the chimney cap now that it's completely dry. That will help water from penetrating too deep, but it will too let it breathe. It just extends the life of the concrete products. If you go down the road and you see work going on the highways, you see concrete work going on, this is the same products that they use there. In fact, is the actual place that we buy these here in Austin is up in, I think it's actually Pflugerville. And they sell to the highway department, and many people like that. It's a wonderful product, seals really well, preserves it very, very well. And as you can see, it's already drying very, very well, very, very natural on the brick. They're still a little bit darker than they normally would be, but that's what it does. So this project is finished 100%. It's a wonderful chimney. It's going to last this family the rest of their life, the next generation to come, and probably another generation after that. I do recommend sealing it every 7 to 10 years. That keeps things very balanced. You do not want a coating. You do not want to completely seal off the breathability of the brick or the concrete, and you want to make it last. So the last thing that he's going to do is put a cap on here. We'll probably sneak by and put that on for him, just so he knows he's got it done right, and that's going to be the last thing. This is Gary, and this is the way we do it. When you repair a chimney, you do every part, do it right. It's there forever.